Welcome to the latest installment of NAU's free 2017 Alumni Webinar Series. I'm pleased to introduce our guest presenter today, Terry Morgan. Terry earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Applied Management in 2004 from NAU at Ellsworth and his NAU Master's in Business Administration in 2008. Today, he serves as a building manager for the federal government in Omaha, Nebraska. He has worked with his current agency for nearly 9 years as Facility Operations Specialist, Project Manager, and now a Building Manager. Prior to that, he has held various planning, construction, and engineering technician positions for a private company, county government, and the Air Force. Terry is a frequent contributor to the jobs boards on NAUconnect.com, sharing job openings with the federal government around the country. He also volunteers for the Alumni Student Mentoring Program, NAU Match, and is a regular contributor to the NAU Foundation Scholarship Program. Last month, Terry received the 2017 NAU Distinguished Service Alumni Award at the NAU Bellevue celebration in recognition of his career success, volunteerism, and community involvement. On this webinar, Terry will share his advice on how to stand out as a candidate for federal jobs and some tips on using USJOBS.gov, the federal government's official employment website. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm glad to be here today.
You now have the controls.
So the reason I came across this presentation as part of being a federal employee, there's different levels, as in even a private business. You start off as an entry-level employee, then you can either go into technician, mid-management, and then career. You stay on those paths, either staying as a technician for most of your career, or you can get into the management supervisory part of it. And what the particular agency that I work for is they have a leadership development program for the 13s, the 14s, and the 15s, which are considered senior level managers. Somebody had suggested, how about, for those middle tier managers or those middle tier technicians, which I happen to fall in for. So this presentation was actually part of my leadership development class that I take with the agency that I work for. And I contacted the person that was the presenter for this. I told them that I would like to go ahead and share this with some of the National American University alumni and even students or anybody that's watching this on how to basically write your resume if you're applying for federal positions. Again, this isn't going to guarantee that you get a job. However, it'll show you the differences between writing a resume for a private company and then writing a resume for the federal government. There are some differences as far as the length, and then as far as some information that you need to include and information that you cannot put on your resume or it'll be disqualified automatically. So with our agenda, we'll cover some slides of getting started, build and customize your resume, writing your accomplishments in a powerful way, using similar terms and keywords, and you'll hear the word keywords, and I'll explain that as we go through. Organize for the ease of understanding and selling yourself, and remember things to remember and things to avoid. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to go ahead and bring those up, and we'll answer them as long as we're going through the presentation. Why focus on resumes? This is a primary way for you to communicate your education, your skills, and your experience. Most effective resumes clearly articulate how your skills and experiences match up to the selection criteria that's defined in the job announcements. And that's those job announcements when you go into the USA Jobs website and you're looking for a particular job. Those criteria, or what they call knowledge, skills, and basically attributes, are what the hiring authority for whatever agency you're applying for is going to use to basically kind of match or as a guideline when they review your resume. So you need to read through those job descriptions, and I'll explain that a little bit more detail a little later. Again, always tailor your resume to the job opportunity that you're applying. That doesn't necessarily mean creating a brand new resume, but go ahead and tailor the way you present your skills and the way you list your skills for that particular job opportunity. Getting started, first gather useful resources such as your current resume, the position description or the vacancy announcement that you're applying for. Again, read the entire job announcement. Focus on the critical information to understand whether or not you qualify. USA Jobs has kind of made it easier. They now use little icons that's up in the top quarter of the job announcement that tells you who can apply for this particular position. They also have links throughout the announcement, and I would highly encourage that any link you see in that announcement that you click on and you read through the information that's provided. It also, you need to look at the duties and the qualifications, and then also read through how to apply. And if it talks about assessment questionnaires, go ahead and print off that preview of the assessment questionnaires. That'll give you an idea of what they're going to be asking you. And the reason we want you to gather all this information and get your resume, I'll go ahead and stop here. The reason you want to have all your information up front, and the reason you want to have your resume almost to where it's set up and then you can just kind of tweak it a little bit, is because a lot of times the job announcements are only open anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. And when it's closed, it's closed. So if you don't have anything ready and you go in and say the job announcement's only a week, you don't have anything ready, you look at the job announcement and then you go back trying to get all that information assembled and then apply for the job. I'm not saying you'll miss the closing date, but you're going to be real close to meeting it. So if you have all this information up front before going to apply, or at least going to look at the job announcement, and then you can go back and tweak it a little bit, it's going to help you get your resume submitted earlier. And then also, if there are any additional things that you have to do, such as answering questions, and again, this is the federal government, and we never do anything that's quick and easy or short. Usually the questions that you're going to answer are going to be quite lengthy. So again, tailor your resume to the position. That doesn't mean creating a new one. It just means copying an existing one that you have and adjusting it for that particular position, which may mean you just move some skills that may be currently on the lower part of your resume or the particular job that you're working right now and moving that up to the top, or basically adding some numbers and some percentages, and you'll see that as I go through the presentation. Match your competencies, knowledge, skills, and abilities, experience to the requirements using keywords. What you're going to see when you read through the job announcement is there's certain keywords at the very beginning of what the job position requires. And you need to use those words, add those words to your job description or experience in your resume. You need to emphasize your strengths, even if they're not part of what the job description matches, because there's a lot of things that once you fill the position, that the hiring manager or the person that's actually going to do the interview, they may be able to see those strengths, and that may be just kind of an added bonus to the particular section that you're interviewing. So always emphasize your strengths. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about keywords. Is there an automated process at the front end that kind of sorts resumes based on who's qualified and who's not, or strength of resume?
It depends on the agency. NASA does use an automated program that goes through and screens the initial applications by keyword only. There's other agencies that they actually have an HR department that the person will actually screen through and look for certain keywords. I've been told the Air Force does use keyword matching, and then they've actually moved to an actual person. A couple of the positions that I applied for early on when I was applying for a federal job with the Department of the Air Force, at that time they were using keywords. and the fact that I was inexperienced and didn't meet what their education requirement actually prevented me from getting jobs. In fact, one of the positions was a position that I supervised while I was active duty.
Right.
So there's a little bit of heartburn with that when the AG come back and says that you're not qualified for that position, and you know you are because you supervise that position. But again, that was all based on what they got from my application, which is primarily the resume. I didn't have the words listed that they needed, and I also hadn't completed my bachelor's degree. I was almost there, but hadn't completed. And for that particular level, they needed a bachelor's degree.
Okay, thank you.
Also, leave out experience that isn't relevant to that particular position. That's where you need to look at emphasizing your strengths, and then also experience that isn't relevant to that position. Look at what they're looking for. If they're emphasizing on management or communication or project management, if that experience that isn't quite relevant to that position, however, indicates a strength that was mentioned in it, just go ahead and reword that to where it really emphasizes your ability to manage, your ability to communicate. So that's kind of a fine line on emphasizing your strengths but leaving out stuff that isn't relevant. And I do have a few examples in slides later on.
Okay.
Information included on your resume, you want to put personal information such as your name, your mailing address, work and cell phone numbers, a current email address, country of citizenship, veteran's preference if you're a veteran, reinstatement eligibility if you're a prior government employee, and then highest federal grade, civilian grade held if you were a prior or if you're a current government employee. Job information indicating the position for which you're applying. You can add that, but again, that's optional. I don't know if it gives you any points or not. The one benefit would be is at one time when we were doing more, it wasn't an automated system. They encouraged that. That way your resume and the application that you're filling out would not get lost. However, since everything is now computerized, it's not as relevant as it used to be. Include the dates, hours, level of experience, and examples of each work experience. Federal jobs often require that you have experience in a particular type of work for a certain period of time, and that will be explained in the job announcement, so you really need to key in on that. You must show how your skills and experience meet that qualification and requirement. And again, this doesn't necessarily have to be with the job you're getting paid for. You can use volunteer experience for this also. For each work experience that you list, you must include your job, and again, job title, that's the position, or job title or position that you currently hold. Series and grade, that's for prior government or federal employees. For military, you need to civilianize your titles and positions. Don't use your military grade. And also an example for civilianizing your title is in the military, a lot of people are superintendents. However, in the civilian world, if you're a superintendent, that typically refers to basically public education. So you need to change that to like a middle tier or upper management, or same with the supervisor. You know what, and again, look through what they call you. Again, like certain positions in the military for the higher rankings use the word chief. Chief is not used in civilian. Even the word section chief is not used in the civilian workforce anymore. Branch managers, section managers, team leads, senior team leads, those are the type of title positions that you need to change your military grade to. Definitely include your employer's name and address, supervisor's name and phone number. you don't need to state whether on your resume, you don't need to state whether they can contact them or not. However, you may be asked that question when you actually go in and fill out the application. You need to add the state start and end dates, including the month and the year, the numbers of hours that you work per week. This is an average. You can also use a range if you'd like to. You can go between 40 and 50, 45 and 55. You don't have to just put, you can put 40 hours or 45 hours. But if it varies from month to month, there's no problem. Go ahead and put that range of hours that you've worked throughout the time that you've worked with this or worked this position. The level and amount of experience, and then examples of relevant experiences and accomplishments that prove that you can perform the task. Typically, that's the information that you already have on your resume. But again, look at what they're looking for in that job announcement and make sure that your bullets or the paragraph in your current resume include that or show how you can meet that particular skill.
Terry, going back to changing titles and positions to civilianize them, is there a glossary or just a common understanding of what titles equate to, what military titles equate to civilian titles? My concern or my question is if there would be a tendency to kind of overstate your level of undermanagement or experience, or understate.
I didn't happen to get that particular website. I think the easiest way, I can look it up after the presentation's over and send that to you. It probably wouldn't hurt if somebody just Googles or does I shouldn't use Google. I should say use a search engine. Go ahead and use a search engine and basically put military titles to civilian titles.
Okay.
And usually they'll refer you to a website. And again, a lot of the websites, there's no clear cut document out there that says, okay, if you were an electrical superintendent for the civil engineering squadron, you would basically use this for this particular civilian title. You kind of just need to look at the amount of people that you supervise, what you do, if you're figuring out a budget, if you're assigning work schedules, if you're doing counseling, and depending on your level, whether you're an NCO or an officer, typically if you're a senior NCO, you could very well say that you're a senior manager.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, if you're supervising a large, if you're a squadron, if you're at the top of your squadron. Definitely, if you're a senior NCO or field grade officer, you would probably be considered a senior level manager. But again, you look at those sites, see what they say, and then just go with your best, your best effort. Don't, and that's, I would. It's tough to say whether to downgrade your title, and then if you get an interview. But again, you don't want to like I said, overinflate your title. But typically, if you're mid-grade, I'm going to use some ranks, I guess, for ease of those that are military. If you're an E4 to an E6, you're probably a mid-level supervisor, and then anything above that could be mid-level to senior level. And the commission, if you're an 01 to, I would say, an 03, 04, then you're probably mid-level, entry-level, and definitely, like I said, if you're a field grade officer, senior officer, you're definitely a senior level manager. And then if you're a senior officer that's in the grade of general, rear admiral, or any of those, you're going to be applying for the SES positions anyway. You're not going to be typically you're applying for a GS 12, 13. That's not, it can happen, but most most of the individuals that are retiring that are in that grade of general and above, rear admiral or above, are basically looking for an SCS position.
Right.
Which this can apply for an SCS position, but again, this is more for geared towards, like I said, I'm a GS-12, which I'm probably a mid-level manager if I was a manager. But again, it's gearing me towards taking over that senior level manager position if I can.
Thanks.
Education, you definitely want to put the college or university name and location. The college major, type and year of degree received. If you've not received one, go ahead and indicate the date anticipated. Definitely read the job announcement, and if it flat out says you need this education for this position, you're pretty well stuck to that. I mean, it does allow you to substitute your work experience for education. For most jobs, however, if it states that you need this specific degree with these specific classes for this particular position, they're a stickler for that. In fact, like I said, that was one of the things that knocked me out of some of the first couple positions that I applied for. It said it needed a bachelor's degree. And at that time, I hadn't completed my bachelor's degree, so I was not qualified and didn't proceed on into the application. Whether I agreed with it or not, that was the rules. Again, high school name, location, date of diploma or GED. You're kind of wondering, why would I say high school name, location? Again, if you're applying for an entry-level position and you have an associate's degree or you have a bachelor's degree, it doesn't hurt, and you're younger, you're in your 20s, it doesn't hurt to also include your high school. Now, when I applied for the federal government, I was actually in my 40s. I went ahead and included my college degrees, but I did not include my high school. I graduated from high school back in '81, and that falls in the category where it's really not relevant anymore. So that's why I kind of throw that in there. It basically depends on how long you've been in the workforce and how much education and training you have experience or accumulated through your, whether you're a younger employee or an employee that's a little bit older. If you're going to include anything to do with education, you are going to need a copy of your transcripts. Other qualifications include any certifications that you have. If you have any warrants, which basically is not warrants for arrest, but it's warrants if you're a contracting officer. If you've had any project management certificates, any leadership certificates, any IT type certificates, include those. Job-related training courses that apply to that particular position. If you hold any licenses, include those. Publications, honor societies, leadership positions in volunteer, civic, or church. And I actually have an example of a resume that kind of explains that leadership position in a volunteer or civic area to kind of let you know what we're talking about. And then also, if you're a membership of any professional organizations, go ahead and include that also. Writing your work history. This is the most important section of your resume. For each position held, highlight significant accomplishments made while serving in that position, remembering to use those keywords from the description. USA Jobs Resume Builder provides space for 3,000 characters of work experience for each position. This is approximately one full page. So this is where the federal resume differs a little bit more than a resume for a private company. An activity is an accomplishment if it sets you apart from other candidates, if it improved operations and efficiency, if it resolved the problem, if it saved money, or it was completed before an expected date. And again, this is just a few of the items that you can consider an activity as an accomplishment. Basically, what you want to show is what it was, how it helped whatever agency or company or activity that you're involved in, and then the results. Describe the following in writing and accomplishment. Situation you faced, action you took, results of your effort. You could use bullets and sub-bullets, or you can use a paragraph. I am partial to bullets and sub-bullets just because that's how I've always written. I've always written in a technical level. However, if you can write and you can get your ideas across in a paragraph, there's nothing wrong with using the paragraph method. Use numbers, percentages, times, dollars to highlight accomplishments. Include examples of monetary worth regarding that accomplishment. I added a few extra words in that bullet, and as I was going through, I realized that I kind of made a mistake, so I kind of reworded it. But an example would be you managed a $250,000 project. Use figures like that. Go ahead and throw in those monetary amounts. Go ahead and throw in the fact that whatever you did affected more than one building or affected a certain number of people. The next example includes amounts you served 5,000 customers in a 4-month period, or you processed on average 25 applications. Again, those are just little blurbs from a bullet statement in somebody's resume, but that's what we're looking for as far as numbers to highlight your accomplishments. Articulate the ways you save money or energy, manage projects or accounts, led in your internships, jobs, or extracurricular activities. Percentages, I have mixed feelings on percentages, but again, that's just my personal opinion, and also it depends on who's looking at it. I would go ahead and if you're going to use percentages, don't just use a percentage. Add a little bit more information. Improved efficiency of a document processing by 25% over the previous year. Maybe throw in some additional information stating what that 25% was. Again, if you wanted to use numbers that somebody could, that supported that 25%, I would encourage that. Wrote 25 news releases in a 3-week period under daily deadlines. Identified, researched, or recommended a new internet service provider, cutting the company's online costs by 15%. Again, you can use that percentage, but if you also want to use the money amount that you saved, if it was $5,000, $15,000, along with that 15%, that's not a bad idea. I'm going to take a minute and get a little drink of water. Apologize for that, but you're getting a little dry.
Sorry.
Examples: wrote prospect letter that has brought in more than $25,000 in donations to date. Managed the student organization budget for more than $7,000. Assisted with twice month payroll activities, ensuring employees were paid as expected on time. I would also include basically by the first of the month, something like that to kind of include that. Suggested procedures that decreased average work order processing time from 10 minutes to 5 minutes. Even though that sounds like a small amount, basically that showed that you reduced the processing time by 50%. That's where I showed an example of basically using the numbers. So you could say suggested procedures that decreased average order processing time from 10 minutes to 5 minutes, and then throw in that 50%, or just use that. It's up to you. Like I said, I would just use numbers to also support your percentages. Mm-hmm. Experience needs to address every required qualification of the job announcements. So that's why it's important to go ahead and either have that job announcement up or print it out just to use as you're writing your resume. Hiring agencies will look for specific terms to make sure that you have the experience that you're seeking. Keywords. Again, like I said, look at the keywords that they use in that position description. Also look at the context of that keyword, because keywords basically can communicate multiple skills. Example, the keyword may be an analyst. It depends on, you can assume that you're collecting data, you're evaluating the effectiveness, but an analyst as far as like intelligence, an analyst as far as IT, an analyst as far as business can be a little bit different. Yeah, you're collecting data. Yeah, you're evaluating it. You're going to use it to determine the decision. However, there may be just slight differences. So look at those keywords also and see how it's used, the context that's being used in that particular sentence or paragraph. True or false? Resumes are scanned for keywords by an automated system. It's partially true. Most agencies, resumes are scanned by real people. They're HR specialists. However, like I mentioned, NASA uses a contextual grammar based on artificial intelligence software. The Air Force at one time did. I don't know if they still do. I'm not really sure how the agency I work for does anymore, because they've actually centralized or combined our HR with another agency. So basically, they're going to be looking at our resumes a little bit differently now, even than they did before. And again, the resume review is just one step of a multi-step application review process. It's just the beginning step of grading you and then moving you up or allowing you to continue on in basically the application and hiring process. With that being said, if you apply for a federal job, basically that application will be in you'll have to create an account, and that application will be on your account. You need to go ahead and set up tags in there for that, so it'll announce you by either email, or if you don't do that or it doesn't allow you to do that, you need to go in on at least a weekly basis, if not sooner, every other day, and check on the status of your resume, because there are certain things. Typically, they will email you and let you know where you sit and if there's any additional information. However, for some reason, there's a glitch, and they had requested additional information. The fact that you said, "Oh, I didn't know about this," that doesn't really count. That's why you need to go ahead and check USA Jobs. If you got active applications in there, check that every so often, just to find out where the status was. And then also, in like with my agency, in the beginning levels of the application, it will not tell you that you haven't been selected or to move on. You actually have to go in and bring that up through USA Jobs. But further along you move on, then if you haven't been selected to move on, you will get contacted by somebody. But initially, based on just your resume, you won't get notified. You'll actually have to come in and read it. And it'll give you some description as why. Basically saying you didn't meet the basic job requirements, you didn't meet the education level. There can be a contact to basically give you assistance. However, they will not, it's not an appeals process, it's not a dispute process. If you've been declined, you've been declined, period. There's no going back in there and saying, but it's all based on what you submitted in the application and your resume. That's why the resume is so important.
But each, if I may, each review is independent of other reviews, so a rejection once won't affect your chances later in the for another opportunity.
No, if you've been rejected 10, 15 times, it has no bearing on the current application that you put in.
Okay.
And that's what some people, I'm not going to tell you how to go in and get for a job. I usually look for jobs that I'm interested in or I have the skills for. But some people, what they've been told and what they've said they've done, if they're just trying to get into the government, basically they'll throw out like a net. So they'll go in and apply for a bunch of positions, and hopefully, kind of like throwing out a net, hopefully you'll get at least 2 or 3 bites. It doesn't hurt you, or you're not going to be penalized by the amount of applications that you have in USA Jobs. Place your most current experience first. Provide greater detail for that experience that is relevant. Show all experience and accomplishments under the job which you've earned. Again, either use bullet or paragraph format, whatever you're comfortable with. That doesn't matter as far as the way you write your resume. You're not going to get penalized if you use bullets or if you use a paragraph. Again, they're looking for keywords in the content and support. However, do use plain language. Do not avoid acronyms. Go ahead and spell that acronym completely out. And if it's purely an acronym used for your current career field, I would go ahead and kind of convert it into layman's terms. And that's something you need to think about. If you're currently working in an IT position and you're applying for an IT position in the federal job, typically those acronyms or the terms that you use are going to carry over. Same with security. If you're working in a security career field right now and you're applying for a federal job that's in the security career field, those acronyms and terms are going to apply. However, I would encourage to get rid of the acronyms and just use those terms. There are acronyms that I used while I was active duty, and I currently use those in my current job. However, they have a completely different meaning.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful with that. I know that's tough in a world of where we shorten everything. I mean, example, Kentucky Fried Chicken is now KFC. You really on your resume need to go ahead and take that time to explain that whole term. Get rid of the acronym and spell it out, especially if it means whether you're going to get the job or not, or whether you're going to move on in the application process. It's definitely worth the time. It is crucial that your resume effectively sells your credentials. Again, this is what you're using to sell yourself, and you need to take pride in yourself. You need to go ahead and brag on yourself a little bit. Don't over exaggerate anything, but however, don't be so humble that you're not selling yourself or you're preventing yourself from really explaining your skills. Excuse me. Display key selling points prominently at the top of the first page of the resume or towards the top of each job experience that you're selecting. Selling yourself again, look at your resume and ask, can a hiring manager see my main credentials within 10 to 15 seconds? Does the criteria information jump off the page? Do I effectively sell myself on the top quarter of that page? And usually the top quarter of the page is your most recent job experience. Use correct verb tense, and then present tense for current positions, past tense for past positions. Always use action verbs. Again, use your keywords, write clearly in plain English, and proofread again and again and again and again. Check your resume for spelling. Excuse me again, I'm going to get another drink. Check your resume for spelling and grammatical errors. Have someone else with a good eye for detail, and review your resume. With that being said, you will not be rejected if you don't have a comma in the correct place. If you don't have a period instead of an exclamation or an exclamation instead of a period, they don't look that close to the grammar in your resume. However, it needs to make sense. It needs to flow. Someone needs to be able to read it without being confused or hesitating, saying, what does that mean? Do I need to reread it? If they have to reread it, they're not going to. They're going to go through it once and continue on. Again, check for your alignment. I'll kind of explain that a little bit later. Resume doesn't have to contain every detail of your work experience, but it's got to contain a lot. Be judicious. If your college days are far behind you, does it really matter if you pledged a fraternity or delivered a pizza? Again, if you look at my age, you think my college days were way behind me. However, I finished college later in life. But I didn't particularly belong to a fraternity. However, if I did, and it showed that and I was an officer and it showed leadership, I would include that. Now, if you graduated, 15 to 20 years ago from college, and it really doesn't, it's not pertinent to the position that you're applying for, I would go ahead and leave it out. Editing step will be difficult if you're holding on to your past for emotional reasons. And that actually is not going back 10 or 15 years. If you're holding on to something just for purely emotional purposes, you need to let it go unless it's relevant to the position that you're applying for. Don't begin every sentence with I, and these are things you need to avoid. Don't begin every sentence with I. Don't ramble. Be concise. Bullet statements are a way of helping you with this. Don't lift statements verbatim from that position's description. They do look for that. Go ahead and look what that position description says, and then rewrite it in your words using your experience. And again, using the keywords that they mentioned. Don't write your resume like it's a long essay. Again, that's for people that are experienced with paragraphs or communicating ideals in very specific paragraphs. So basically saying don't, write certain experiences and you carry it out and use all 3,000 characters. You need to put as much experience as you can in that amount of space that you have to show your work experience. Again, don't use acronyms, spell them out. Important facts about the federal hiring position. The federal government does have a standard job application. It's your resume. Even though you're going in USA Jobs and you're filling out personal information and you're filling out certain questions, the primary document or the primary part that is used as your application that will allow you to move on in the hiring process is your resume. Hiring agencies use the job announcement to describe the job position. They list the requirements, qualifications, and responsibilities. So everything that you need to do on that job will be in that job description or the associated links that you can click on. After applying, the hiring agency uses the information in your resume to verify that you have the required qualifications. Once the hiring agency has determined who is qualified, they may use other assessments such as testing, interviews. They may contact you to do a second step of application. It just depends on that particular agency. However, that's a good thing. Anytime you get contacted for additional information, for testing, for interviews, that's a good thing because that means you're moving on in the application process. Things that you should leave out of your resume. Do not include the following types of information. Again, classified or government sensitive information. That's a real big thing in the government right now. Your social security number. Do not include your social security number on your resume. Photos of yourself. That's the no-no. It'll eliminate you immediately if you put a photo on your resume. So pull out anything that would distinguish you other than basically your qualifications. Personal information such as age, gender, religious affiliation, etc. You need to pull out all those things that would identify you or pull you out and categorize you into a specific group. Basically, what should be on your resume are your skills. Basically, this will eliminate any biases. This will eliminate the chance for any type of discrimination or anything like that. They want your basic information and then your skills. And then also encrypted and digitally signed documents. You do have part of the process of USA Jobs, you're allowed to upload other documents as part of your application, such as your transcripts. If you're a veteran, your DD 214, letters of recommendations, you can upload that. Most of those are signed, still signed by an actual person. the digitally signed documents, I would go ahead and if you can, get the person to sign the document by hand and scan it in. If not, I don't know if it's a particular showstopper. However, since I went ahead and said leave it out at this particular time, I would go ahead and if you can get the person to actually physically sign it, and then either you or they scan it in, I would suggest using that for now. I think that's going to change because digitally signed documents is basically the way that everybody is going to. I currently, in basically any contract document that I work with now, I digitally sign everything. So I see this going away. Traditional versus federal resumes. Forget what you know about typical resume writing for your federal resume, and that's more for the length. You can have 2 to 5 pages in length, and that's for an entry-level job. Right. So if you're applying for middle management or senior management, again, you can increase the length of your resume because of getting the detailed information of your job experience that's needed for you to continue on. I did include a website that you can jot down or review the recorded session. Or Tammy, will that website be made available?
Yes, I'll also post the actual PowerPoint too, so I'll do both.
And again, this isn't a drop dead definite way that you have to write it. It's just a recommendation. Here's an example of federal resume. Again, the name, address, city, your cell phone, email address where you can be contacted, country of citizenship. There are some jobs that are advertised with USJOBS that states that you need to be either a born or naturalized citizen of the United States. Also put if you're going to select veteran's preference if you're a veteran. And then the highest grade, again, that applies towards previous or prior or current government employees. However, if you've never worked for the federal government, you can go ahead and put highest grade if you want to go ahead and put mid-level manager, entry-level manager, or put what your current grade is. Say, an example, you work for an engineering company, civil engineering company, you may be a senior surveying technician, or you may be a mid-level surveying technician. You can go ahead and put that in there. It's not going to hurt. However, if you are a prior federal employee, I would suggest that you use the GS. Basically, there's a code that identifies what job you held. Like I'm a building manager, which is the code is an 1176, and then your highest grade. So for me, that term would be GS-1176-12. Again, the job type, and there are applications for permanent positions, temporary positions, recent graduates. So you need to go ahead and put that in there. Again, if there are desired locations or you have a desired location, go ahead and put that in there. Again, that stands for, that format is U.S., Florida, Orlando, U.S., Florida, Cape Canaveral. So typically that's what you would do, and that's how it'll be listed on the job application too. And you'll actually, as part of the job application, if it's multiple sites, you'll be asked what particular site. If you want a particular site, you may be open to move and go to any one of those sites, so you can select all. Or if there's a particular site, you don't want to leave the Rapid City area, you don't want to leave the Denver area, you don't want to leave the Sioux Falls area, you don't want to leave the Omaha area, or Minneapolis area, you can select that particular area that's close to or that location. Again, work experience, I put a generic thing in there, federal government. You actually put the agency or what position you held. Again, the time that you held it, grade level. Again, I put 12 because I'm a federal employee. So again, prior federal employees, you put grade level. For those that have never worked for the federal government, that's where you go ahead and put kind of that job description. description, team lead, entry level, intermediate level, senior level, and then again, the hours per week. There, you can go down and actually put the title that you were, your supervisor. I had originally put that you didn't have to put contact supervisor. And again, you don't have to. You can put in there yes or no. However, they will ask that question when you go in and do the application. And then here's some examples of some of the experience that that person would have. Next is your education. Again, Bachelor of Science, the date you graduated, college that you graduated from, location, quarter or semester hours, if you want to put that in there. Definitely, I would suggest you put your GPA in there, the major, and then a relevant coursework, licenses or certifications if you have any. Again, the example down here was Institute of Public Affairs, Public Affairs Administrator Level 2, and when they got it. Language skills, even if English is the only language that you speak, I would go ahead and put that in there. If you speak multiple languages, you need to go ahead and put the levels that are spoken, written, and that you can read. Especially if it specifically states that in the job announcement, you need to put that in your resume. If it doesn't state that in the job announcement, this is just optional additional information that you can include. However, it's very helpful, and it's not going to hurt you to put that in there. Affiliations, just the typical affiliations, examples of affiliations that you could be, additional skills, grant writing, master Microsoft Office programs, leadership and service roles. Here's kind of an example of a volunteer. Basically, Combined Federal Campaign Board of Directors Chair. From 2014 to present, leads a volunteer board of 30 federal employees providing leadership in the management of a federal charity campaign. I would do that for every leadership role or service role that you put in there. If it has to do with a charity organization, a fraternal organization, a church or civic organization, go ahead and put that position, and then put that little blurb in there of what you did. Even if you're not an officer position, you probably did something through your tenure with that organization. Put that in there. Active member, you know, if you're an active member and you've been with them for 5 years, you supported or led, you know, so many events, put that in there. And then again, references. Go ahead and put the name, the position that that person held, organization or business name, address, and phone number. The federal government, you need to let your references know that you're putting in a federal application, because the federal government will contact your references and they will ask questions. So if you're going to use, I would use a current one. Definitely make sure that their phone number and their email address is current, and then also out of courtesy give them a heads up that they may get contacted by the federal government. Don't freak out. It's just them contacting you about a job position. This is an example of what they call an outline format, which uses paragraphs to basically demonstrate your experience. Again, if you're good at writing and you can communicate and get your point across in writing, and that's how your resume is already formatted, there's nothing wrong with using that. Go ahead and use that. However, I cannot communicate very well in a paragraph. I can communicate very well in bullet statements because that's what I have the most experience. So that's what I use. However, again, there's nothing wrong with using a bullet or a paragraph type format to describe your experiences. How long is too long for a federal resume? Don't worry about the 1 to 2 page rule. Again, like I mentioned earlier, USJOBS, which is the application program, allows you 3,000 characters for each job description if you want to do it that way. So don't worry about the length of your resume if you're putting in pertinent information. Again, some of us that have been in the workforce for longer than 10 years, we kind of limit. I actually stop. I will put little blurbs, maybe the job title, but anymore I'm getting to the point where if it's past 10 years and it's not going to contribute to the position significantly, I don't even put that in anymore. I just get rid of it totally. Don't hide your great work. Have a trusted advisor review it. And it's more about the relevance and content than it is about the length. So don't worry if you have that much experience, go ahead and use as much space as you need to describe that experience that you have.
Terry,
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the opposite example. My own example, prior to my current position with NAU, I worked for a nonprofit for 20 years. So I mean, that is my experience. And in that case, a bullet, I'm just wondering if you have a limited work history, even as extensive over a number of years, if paragraph form makes more sense, so you can really delve into, you know, what you did over those 20 years.
I would use whatever means that gets your experience across the best.
Yeah.
I'm sure within that 20 years, and again, if you worked for, like I said, nonprofit, or even if you've worked for the same company for 10, 15 years, you've moved, you've progressed through that company, you've held different positions.
Absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead and break it out that way.
Okay.
So you could put the main job and then put the sub jobs that you've held out to it, or you could even probably break that out of, excuse me, same job, but you held a different job position. So you can put that job position with the same company, what you did, and then the next one above it would still be with that same company, but it would be a different job position. Right. You're not going to get penalized for that.
Right, or your duties, or if you favor the bullet approach, you just really itemize all the things that you were in charge of and accomplished.
Yes, I would suggest whatever's easiest for you.
Okay.
This is probably not the time for you to take on a challenge and take up a new style of writing. If you're comfortable with the paragraph format, do not start doing bullet statements just for the sake of this presentation, and that's what I use. It's whatever you're comfortable with, you're most experienced with, that you can get your job's experience across, and make sure that they understand what your job experience is. So if you're used to doing bullet statements, stay with that format. If you're used to doing paragraph, stay with that format.
Okay. Good advice.
Here's kind of a snapshot of what it looks like going into USA Jobs. I'm not going to cover it in detail because this is more your resume. It's not so much USA Jobs. We could actually probably do another seminar or webinar on USA Jobs, the site itself. But they've even changed that up in the last couple months. They've changed it up since this presentation was created. So the general information and the general layout is still the same, but some of the icons and some of the things may look a little bit differently. Again, this is going into USA Jobs. You're going to want your basic information, first name, last name, your address, whether you're a U.S. citizen, whether you're a formal federal government, whether you're qualifying for veterans preference. Again, your work experience, each section is built up. And again, I guess I should have started. USA Jobs, if you don't have a resume, USA Jobs has what they call a resume builder. So you can actually go in, or well, you can even use it if you have a resume, if you want to cut and paste. However, you're not penalized on whether you use the resume builder in USA Jobs or whether you just upload your resume. There's no preference, and it's not going to penalize you as long as you get the needed information across. So again, using a resume builder in USA Jobs, again, they're going to ask you for your required elements, the name, and you have to name your resume when you go in and use the resume builder. And then you just list your information in there. Again, here it says experienced workers may choose to only list jobs that were held the last 10 years. Again, that's good. But if jobs past that 10-year experience, if you've been in the workforce that long, if that work is pertinent to this particular job description, I would include it.
Yeah.
Education, again, kind of as I mentioned earlier, you're going to include the name of the school, the country, state, city, town, what degree you obtained, grade point averages or stuff that you can add in there, academic papers, key presentations. Again, that's additional information that you can add. It's not going to hurt you to put that in there. I would definitely say if you don't need it unless it's part of that particular job description. Excuse me again. If that particular job description wants examples of papers that you've written, then I would definitely include that. Again, optional information include job-related training, including classes, seminars, coursework, certifications, or trainings that you've completed that relates to your professional development and that particular position description. In addition to your supervisors, you may choose to provide professional or personal references who can vouch for your character, work ethic, and dependability. I don't think there is a limit on a number of references you can have. I wouldn't go overboard, and again, I would use people that the government can contact, and I would definitely you want to use people as references that are going to support what you provided in the resume. Language skills, again, if you have language skills, go ahead and put the level of proficiency, whether you can read, write, or speak. Affiliations, professional associations, society clubs, organizations, especially if the work that you do for those particular affiliations can support the position that you're applying for. And again, professional publications include any publications that you've contributed to or have been included in. You can include other relevant pieces of your resume in this section: skills, awards, leadership activities, public speaking engagements, volunteer experience. You may choose to list your availability, the type of work environment you're seeking or desired, whether it's indoor, outdoor. I wouldn't go in there and put, I want to work in a work environment that has lots of glass windows for natural light. I just wouldn't include that because they're pretty much not going to look at it, and it's definitely, I wouldn't suggest it. I would bring that up once you get into the interview and you find out what the work environment is. But however, like National Park Service, on their advertisements, they will tell you whether you're working inside a building or whether you're going to be outside of working. So you definitely, if you want to work inside and you're looking at working for the National Park Service, you definitely need to look at what their description said. There's also U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Some of the applications that I've sent out, there are positions that basically do work outdoors 90% of the time. There are positions, you need to look at that description in there that says travel time. If it says you're going to travel 25% or more, that means you're going to be gone a lot. If it says travel up to 10%, that means you're probably going to be gone a month and a half out of the year, which means you're going to do some traveling back and forth. So if you don't want to travel, I don't suggest you apply for that position. Tips for formatting. This is more or less for cutting and pasting your existing resume into the USJOBS resume builder. You can copy and paste the text from Word documents into the resume builder. However, there's some formatting that you may use that doesn't play nice with USJOBS resume builder. So basically, the best way to do it is go ahead and save your current resume into the .text format. And then once you save your resume into the .text format, then you can go ahead and copy and paste into the resume builder. Your application will be reviewed based solely on the information you provide. Again, don't assume the HR specialist is going to read between the lines. If you don't include it on your application or in your resume, it doesn't count, period. Why is it important to carefully craft your resume? Basically, HR specialist reviews the application packages and makes eligibility and qualifications determined for each applicant based on the information that you include in your resume and then also upload into the application. If you're applying for veterans preference and you do not include your DD 214, you will basically be disqualified and you won't proceed. If you are applying and using your education as the basis for a lot of your experience, or you want to include your education in your resume, but you don't include your transcripts, you're not going to go any further. You'll basically, essentially, I don't want to use the word disqualified, but that's actually what will happen. And they typically, once the date closes for that application, and you say, I'm going to select education or I'm going to select my veterans preference, and you did not upload those documents, they're not going to come back and call you or contact you and say, hey, you did this, would you please submit it? If you didn't submit it at the time that the position closed, you're not going to be considered and you're not going to move on. Now, if you did your application and it hasn't closed out, you can still go back in there and upload those documents and resubmit it. If an applicant's self-rated answers don't support the information given in the resume or essay response, the HR specialist will deduct points. This is something that happens as you go, could happen as you go actually apply in USA Jobs. There may be a section, you may just go in there, fill out the basic information, upload your resume, upload your pertinent documents, hit submit, and that may be all you have to do. However, there may be jobs where once you've done that, or part of, you'll get so far in submitting it, then it's going to shoot you over to another link, to another program. The Air Force does it a lot. The Department of Navy does it a lot. And then you have to go through and you have to answer questions on what you feel is your level of experience, whether you're a beginner, whether you're intermediate, whether you're an expert in your career field or that particular job experience. And you need to go ahead and answer that on what you feel. But you need to have information in your resume backing that up. So if you say you're an expert in the field and people come and get recommendations from you on how to solve this particular issue, or you train on that, you need to have that in there in your resume saying, I trained so many people on this particular skill.
Mm-hmm.
What to expect next. Applicants are given scores based on your responses. The scores determine the top candidates. Only the names of the best qualified candidates will be sent on forward to the certificate of referral, sent on with the certificate of referral to the hiring managers. And then from that, basically they develop their lists and they contact you for whatever the next method of the application is, whether it's testing, interviews, and you may get more than one interview. I'll give you an example, within the agency, when I first started, I submitted my application, then I got notified that I had to go ahead and do an additional testing, some additional information. I did that. Then I got contacted and I did a telephone interview with 3 individuals. When I moved up to the project manager position, it was a promotion. I had to resubmit application through USA Jobs, had to update my resume, went through the same process as anybody else, and then I actually had an interview with 3 people in person, and again, it was a panel. Our agency likes to use panels of at least 3 people. When I moved to the facility manager, the building manager position, it was a lateral, but I still had to submit my resume for my boss and then his boss to review it to ensure that I had the skills to be able to handle managing a government facility. So even within the organization, if you're applying for different positions or even doing a lateral move, you need to keep your resume updated because they're going to use that to make sure that you have the skills to be able to do the job.
Mhm.
Again, the information from this presentation was obtained from a leadership development course that was presented by Nikki Montag, which was from the agency that I work for. I'll go ahead and open it for any questions if anybody has any.
You may have just answered one of the questions I had, and that's whether current government employees who are non-veterans enjoy a preference when applying for positions.
Not for veterans preference. If you're a non-veteran, say you're a current federal employee, but you're not a vet, you can apply for veteran preference. However, there are applications out there that are only solicited for current federal employees. They're not open to the general public. So if you're a current federal employee, those would be the ones that you can go ahead and apply for one that's open to the public.
Right.
But those are the ones that are open strictly to federal employees. And again, even with that being said, you need to look at the qualifications. It may be a Department of the Army or Department of the Air Force position that they're hiring for federal employees, but they may be only hiring current DOD employees. Federal employees that work for HUD or work for IRS, USDA, all the different SSA, all the different agencies that are out there, they may not be able to apply for that even if they are a federal employee. There are special categories for prior federal employees. There are special categories out there for military spouses. You can claim, you can select that and say that you want to use military spouse, and you can select that, and there's certain documentation you have to insert in for that. If you've been a displaced employee in the federal government, there are certain selections that you can do for that. If you, they'll also give you, if you've worked for VISTA or Job Corps or the Peace Corps, there's certain job applications that are open for that. You just need to, that's where it plays, you really need to look and see who can apply for that particular job.
Right. And on that point, you've shared with me before new graduate programs, or I should say positions that are only for recent graduates.
And that's, if you see anything that sees an internship or recent graduates or a program called Pathways,
yep,
those are geared towards recent graduates. Again, they don't care what age you are, they're recent college graduate. And what they're going to do is they're going to bring you in an entry level, and then there's going to be, if you get hired, what they're looking for is bringing you in on an entry level and then basically grooming you for that particular job with that particular agency.
right.
There's promotion. In fact, they'll start you off at an entry level, and then depending on if you stay with them for a certain year, you meet certain requirements, you have to do presentations. If you meet those requirements, then you'll get promoted to the next grade after a certain time, and then you'll continue on with your development. Once you've completed that development, then you get promoted to the next grade. So it's not a bad program to get into if you're a recent graduate. I would highly encourage, if you're interested in the federal government and you are a recent graduate, which means you graduated within 2 years, I would definitely look for those positions.
Yeah, definitely a good deal. And this, I'm thinking promotions versus changing with either to a different agency or even a different position within your current agency. Promotions don't necessarily require a whole new application process, but if you were looking to move lateral or even
it all depends on the agency. Like
okay,
when I took the position from facility operations specialist to a project manager, it actually was a promotion. So I actually they sent the job out as an advertisement. I competed against other federal employees, so it wasn't a guarantee.
right.
It basically, but again, that was an open position. Typically, promotions, if you're going to get promoted you're keeping that same job, and I think that's the question you were actually asking. say you're a building manager and you're going for promotion to the next level, that just requires the submission of your resume.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more for not so much your boss, because your boss knows what you're doing, because the federal government is good on doing appraisals. Like I get a mid-year appraisal that's documented mid-year appraisal and a documented annual appraisal. So that shows what qualifications experiences that have increased over the last year, education that have increased over the last year. And most of the time, supervisors are going to know that because they have to sign off. You can't just take a course in the federal government without going through your supervisor. But if you're going for a promotion, that basically, you keep your resume up to date, because your boss already knows what you're going to do. They're going to review it, but it's going to have to go in front of his boss, and then it's also going to have to go in front of the HR specialist.
Okay.
So definitely for a promotion, and definitely to move lateral, like I didn't get a promotion or a grade change, I moved from project management into facility management. I needed to submit an updated resume.
Right. Right. So it goes back to your recommendation early in the presentation, just to always keep your resume available and updated for when these opportunities present themselves.
As a minimum, I would update your resume at least once a year.
Okay.
Every time you have a different change, once you've completed the course, once something significant, you've been recognized, you joined the new affiliation, that needs to immediately go on your resume and keep it updated, so you're not scrambling when you get ready to apply to put all that in there and you possibly could forget. You need to update that as it occurs.
Yeah.
That keeps it current. But as a minimum, you need to go through once a year, look at stuff that may not be pertinent or relevant anymore and get rid of it. Maybe streamline some things. And again, if anything has changed, go ahead and add that to your resume.
Right. And that's good advice, whether you're applying for federal or private positions.
Right.
To keep it updated. The final point that I have, or it is a point, it's because it's a pet peeve of mine, when you were talking about being careful not to have typos in your resume, and having somebody else read it is very good advice, because you can, after you've read something enough, you can look past those grammatical errors that you just don't see anymore. But I would think that even if it's not a deal breaker at the first phase of applying for a federal job, it could become important if you make it to that second phase, and you're now being measured up against other candidates who have been advanced to that next stage. Is that your experience, Terry, or is it still not as?
No, yeah. I would say yes, because again, your resume is going to get other people, and if you have 3 or 4 people, you're all qualified.
Exactly.
So what the interview or anything is, they're looking for a tiebreaker.
Yeah.
That's what I tell everybody. That's why even on an interview, and I still encourage it, I still do it, dress above the position that you're applying for. Right. So if you're going to work in an office that typically is going to be business casual, you're going in for the interview, I would wear a suit and tie. Because it does make an impression. Now, if you're going in for a job that you're going to be working outside in the surveyor, don't wear a suit. However, I would wear brand new jeans, a very nice collared work shirt that's ironed. Definitely make sure your shoes are polished. Just kind of the same stuff that was pushed ever since I can remember, and I think it's still being pushed. And I would encourage it to anybody that I mentor and I would talk to. When you go in for that interview, you need to go ahead and dress at least one step above what's required as the normal dress.
Right, right. You only get one opportunity to make that first impression.
That's correct.
So, well, I don't have any other questions. If you don't, do you have any final words? It was incredibly informative. I appreciate it very much.
No, I would just say anybody that's interested in a federal job, even if you're not seriously interested, go ahead and get on USA Jobs and just take a look and see what's out there. Even in times right now that we're kind of changing administration, so we're not sure whether we're hiring or not, a lot of agencies will do what they call a pool. They're basically taking applications that they're getting qualified people ready. So when the hiring freeze or whatever restrictions being lifted, that they can go ahead. There are some agencies that are still hiring. From the examples of the job descriptions that I've sent you,
Right.
there are still agencies that are hiring now. I hate to say it, but my agency is basically, over the next year, we're allowed to hire 7 positions nationwide. Or I'm sorry, 70 positions nationwide, which means for the region that I work in, which is Nebraska, Iowa, Kansas, and Missouri, we get 3.
Yeah.
So the chances of hiring somebody brand new in the next year for the agency I work for, it's probably not going to happen. However, I don't discourage anybody from getting on there and looking, because there are agencies that are hiring.
That's right. Well, and it's still 70 positions that will become available. So, and that's just your agencies.
And those are probably going to be primarily out in the DC area. So if you're from the Midwest and you're looking at wanting a challenge and see a change, and there's opportunities out in the DC area, that would be a great start.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other advantage to federal jobs, is you were indicating you can select your location preference, but you can also just be open if you're really, as you say, looking to make that first big step in your career and willing to relocate. It's the federal government is a really potentially a very good opportunity for you.
Yes, it is. And there's also, if you are, typically they look for prior military to fill those vacancies, but there are federal job positions over in foreign countries, Asia, Europe, and typically those are a little bit harder to fill, because some people that start off in the federal government, say an example, they graduate, they get hired on here in Omaha, they kind of want to stay here in Omaha. The family's here. And I use Omaha, that's just because where I'm at right now. It applies to Sioux Falls or Rapid City. They may want to stay right there. However, the federal government is always looking for people to go over and work those federal jobs overseas.
Interesting.
And there's some advantages to going over there. Depending on who you work for, you can say if there's a time limit on that particular position. Say it's a 5-year time limit, you get accepted and you go over there for 5 years, you get preference on any jobs that open coming back to the States. So that's if you wanted to go over there for a short period of time, experience, and then you wanted to come back to the States. That doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a position back where you're from. You could. You're going to get priority on the job applications that are available for your skill, for your grade. It's very similar to the military. So say you leave from Omaha, you go over to Ramstein, Germany for 5 years, and you come back. There may not be an opening in Omaha. However, you would take priority if there's an opening in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And that's just an example.
Sure. Well, excellent. That a lot of really good information, whether it's a graduate just starting off or somebody who's looking to advance in their career. So thank you very much, Terry. I really appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I had a great time. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.